What goes up must come down. Welcome to the Brand Breakdown. I'm Michelle.
And I'm Courtney.
And this is where we're going to track the rise and fall of big brands, from companies to celebs to pop culture phenoms and everything in between. Let's get started. Hey you guys, welcome back. We're so excited today to be introducing a new series. We hope you'll be as excited as we are. We're going to be breaking down the life and career of none other than Justin Timberlake. We're so excited. Courtney, are you so excited?
I'm so excited because Justin and NSYNC were like my whole life in middle school and like the first couple of years of high school. So I'm thrilled. I'm super psyched right now.
Okay, well, you're not going to be super psyched with how we're going to start our series, which is when Justin got a DUI in Sag Harbor a couple of months ago, right in the middle of his world tour, or at the beginning. Is it the beginning or right in the middle?
It was kind of at the beginning. He'd done a couple US dates already. I don't think he'd gone to Europe yet. I think he just was in Europe. But yeah, he infamously said this is going to ruin the world tour, which ended up just being like the funniest line ever.
Yeah.
Not being true, which was very impressive. But also the police officer who pulled him over was like, "What are you talking about?" And Justin's like, "The world tour." And because the police officer had no idea who he was because he was so young. Think like a Gen Zer, and he didn't know who Justin Timberlake was.
All right, so let's start from the beginning. So Justin, and I think he was with friends. Jessica was in New York, right?
Yes, so she was filming in New York, and he was staying in the Hamptons for the weekend. And he had met friends for, I don't know if it was like dinner, but obviously drinks at, I believe the hotel is called the American or the Americana. I think it's the American. And so he had met some friends for drinks at the bar. And I think he left around like 11:30 at night. And from what I've read, this is a place that the Sag Harbor PD kind of keep an eye, like it's their DUI trap, like they're frequently keeping an eye on this hotel because this is where people are going to leave and drive drunk because there's not much out there in Sag Harbor. So it's one of the only places you can really like have a late night drink, I think. So they were.
Well, that's normal for them because they're quite a lovely hotel. It's the American. And they're a lovely place. So I hate that they would have the reputation of being a place where you go to drink and then people are going to get you afterwards for DUI.
Well, it's not the reputation of like, oh, this is like it's just there's not a lot of places open late. So if they see somebody leaving there late at night, it's probably because they're coming from the hotel bar type of situation.
It's a beautiful place. It
looks gorgeous.
Yeah,
I looked up
really
some pictures. It looks beautiful.
And it's like 150 years old. So like it's been there for, like through all the things. And all the rooms are sort of the way we like it, sort of old fashioned, but beautiful. And so, yeah, it's very nice and apparently kind of exclusive. So there we are. So he leaves the American. He gets in his car, which P.S., dude, why were you driving? Like, even if you've had 2 drinks, you're super famous. Like, have a driver or walk, for God's sakes, wherever you're going.
Right.
Because it's not a big place. Like, he should have had someone driving him 100%. That was really a dumb move on his part.
Yeah, I think the Hamptons, though, like when celebrities go to the Hamptons, it's one of the things where they like to do the like, oh, we're like everyone's normal here. Like there's not a lot of paparazzi in the Hamptons. And so I think, the rich and famous go there to be normal. So they like don't want to have a driver. Like they want to drive themselves. They want to go to the farmers markets and go to the beach. I don't think they go to the beach. They probably just like lay out by their massive pools at their mansions. But so I think it's like they all intentionally pretend to be normal in like an enclave of superiority. So, but yeah, I thought that was weird too. I'm like, you're Justin Timberlake. Why are you driving? Like, call an Uber. Like, come on. at the
Oh,
very
right, yeah,
least.
so there's Uber, yeah, you totally could do that. Like, my husband's really, really tall, and he is a big strapping fella, and when he goes out for a drink with his friends, I'll say, like, "Hey, make sure you don't have more than 1 drink or call me and I'll come get you." Now, I'm not trying to infantilize him, but in our town, like, we have lots of police, and they will pull you over for no reason, and I wouldn't ever wanna for him to jeopardize his reputation or, his job or anything like that. Because if you get a DUI, like, dude, like, people will fire you. They will, it's terrible for you. So I'm really disappointed that he did that. A, and then B, he immediately told the police officer, "Oh, this is gonna ruin my world tour."
Yeah, like he tried to
Ridiculous.
pull a little bit of a I don't know that he was like trying to pull like a do you know who I am? I think it was just something that as he realized what was happening, he was like, "Oh, this is going to be a problem." Um but then he said it out loud and the cop was like, "Okay, how drunk are you?" Like what's wrong with this person? That they think they're going on some sort of tour because they were not he didn't recognize him. Um and so it's interesting. Justin, he refused to take a breathalyzer, but
Which was
he
smart.
did. Yes. I remember being in driver's ed and our driver's ed teacher being like, don't ever take a breathalyzer. Um,
Yeah, unless you're
but
totally
he,
sober.
right. Yeah. But even then, I remember the driver's ed teacher said, like, if you just had like a Altoid or a piece of gum, don't take a breathalyzer because even if you're completely sober, those could still register on
Really?
a
That's crazy.
breathalyzer. Yeah, I don't know if it's true. I just remember maybe he was just trying to impress upon us, like, don't ever do it. Um, but I remember our driver's ed teacher saying that. I don't know if that's like a good thing for a driver's ed teacher to say, but anyway, but he did fail all of his field sobriety tests, which I was surprised by because Justin Timberlake is such a good dancer that I would think his balance and coordination would like stick with him even if he was a little bit buzzed. But apparently it did not. And he was unable to like do the stand on one foot and walk in a straight line with like heel to toe situation. He was unable to do that. So um he tried telling the police he only had like one martini or something, but apparently his eyes were very glassy and bloodshot. He smelled like alcohol, and his boy band dancing skills did not leave him with enough coordination to walk in a straight line or stand on one foot. So
his,
he.
his boy band dancing skills. Yes. He must have been intoxicated in some way. Like, obviously, we don't know. We're alleging that he must have been intoxicated in some way to do that, or maybe he just is not coordinated anymore. I mean, it's possible, right?
I mean, again, he was going on a world tour. So I'm assuming he'd been practicing dancing and choreography. So I would think he'd have a little bit of coordination in him if he was sober, right? If he was stone sober, he would definitely have been able to do it. And if he was even a little bit buzzed, I think he'd still be able to do it. So I'm guessing he was more than even just a little bit buzzed. Um, and the police said that they had been following him because he was driving erratically. I think don't quote me on this, but I think I saw something that said like he ran a stop sign or something, which, if you're in an unfamiliar place and you're not expecting a stop, that can happen. Especially on like a street where it's nighttime, there's no other traffic, you just like blow through a stop sign and you're like, oh crap, I didn't even see it. But apparently he was also like driving erratically. And so the cops had followed him a little bit, or they had like seen him at one intersection driving erratically and then like caught up with him a couple blocks away where he was still driving erratically or whatever. So it wasn't just a momentary, like, oh, maybe he was looking for something in the car or fiddling with the windshield wipers or something like that. And that's when they pulled him over. So they had actually seen him twice and pulled him over after the second time. And that's when he ruined the world tour.
You're like, "You're gonna ruin my world tour." Okay, so they arrest him, and it was really late. It was like 2 o'clock in the morning or something, right?
Yeah,
Um,
I think he left the hotel like I 11:30 p.m. is in my mind, but it might have been later than that. Um, and then he was like, taken down to the station, probably had to call his lawyer, all that. So I think he wasn't like booked until, yeah, something like 2 in the morning.
And his mugshot is not awesome.
He does not look thrilled.
He and he doesn't look sober.
No.
He does not look good in his. I mean, I don't know anybody who looks good in their mugshot or their passport picture. But he definitely does not look good. So that happens. And then so there are a lot of laws surrounding like, that type of arrest and if you can travel and blah blah blah. Do you know about that?
So I believe that immediately because he refused to take a breathalyzer, your license is immediately suspended. Um, because they just assume like if you refuse to take the breathalyzer, that's like kind of the consequence. Like you give up your license. So or at least that's how it works up here. So he automatically lost his license. And I think there was kind of some concern at first about would he be able to travel because he does have this tour. So is he going to like, be like what are the conditions of his bail? Does he have to like stay in the country? Whatever. Whatever the conditions were, he was able to travel because I think he did a couple shows in Europe. And I know he did a show in Chicago, he did a show up here in Boston. So and he was like, I think he like made a joke at one of his shows about like just kind of like a little nod at the situation. So he was trying to be humorous about it while knowing that everybody in the audience is like, oh, dude, you just got arrested like 2 weeks ago. Um, but so he's
Yeah.
still able to, the world tour has not been impacted in that he is able to travel presently. Um,
If he were convicted, if you're convicted of a felony, which I guess this is a felony because it was, um, although it was like what failure to stop at a stop sign and then like going in and out of a lane or something. But if you're convicted of
that's a
this, and
felony?
well, I'm not sure if like I know DUI is a felony, but I think his tickets were
Oh,
for I think DUI is a felony, isn't it? I feel like that's
I
correct.
don't know. I thought it was a misdemeanor. Is
Mm,
DUI a felony? Oh, so here in Massachusetts, it's a misdemeanor depending on how many offenses you've had or like other circumstances. So your first or even second offense is usually a misdemeanor, but a third DUI is a felony. So up here, you get 3 strikes. I don't know
okay.
about other places. So it does
Yeah, so I
vary
know
place to
well,
place.
yeah. So anyway, he was charged with DUI and then 2 citations for running a stop sign and not staying in the lane. So if it is a misdemeanor, good on him because then it's much more likely to either be dismissed or to have a lower sentencing, in which case he can still travel out of the country. But if you're
Hmm.
convicted of a felony, like I think you have to like there's some rules surrounding traveling out of the country, I think. Um, but because I think when Trump was convicted of 34 felonies or whatever, they said that it could impact his international travel if he were to be president again. Um,
Hmm. Yeah, because
which
some countries won't allow you into the country if you have a felony charge
right,
or
exactly.
conviction.
Okay, so I hope it's a misdemeanor. But anyway, so he's arrested, he's mugshotted. He hires Edward Burke, who's a local Hamptons attorney, which is a smart move. I guess you need to hire someone who knows all the local people. You don't want to try to bring in your own bigwig. That doesn't work out very well usually. So, and then a whole bunch of things kind of go wrong on the prosecutor's side, I think. Right?
Yeah, so it looks like Edward Burke, he's a local Hamptons attorney, but like let's not downplay that. He's not like a small town,
Oh,
dealing
right.
with, like he's
I mean,
he's
he's in
still
the
like
Hamptons. Come on.
yeah, he is still the lawyer of choice for celebrities in the Hamptons when they have issues. Um, but I think that one of the things that they are arguing is that hold on, let me see this.
So apparently the police made some significant errors, like during all the processing or whatever. Um, and that, like, during the hearing, a district attorney tried to fix one of those errors, which I think is not okay. Um, so I think Bert contends that Timberlake was not intoxicated, and since he didn't take a breathalyzer, I guess you can't prove that, right? That
Right,
he was
exactly.
intoxicated.
So they can't prove he was drunk. He never did a breathalyzer. He never did a blood test.
Right. They did, they held him overnight for morning arraignment. How terrible is that? So he says he was not intoxicated, that he had one martini with friends and then he left, which one
Mhm.
martini with a guy his size is not going to make a big difference because I think he's pretty tall, right?
Yeah, I think he's
Um,
like over 6 feet. So
yeah, I think you're right. He just looks lean, so maybe that, I don't know. Anyway, one martini is not going to make a big difference. And since he didn't take the breathalyzer and didn't do a blood test, they really, honestly, I don't think they're going to be able to. I think they're going to throw the DUI out and they're going to keep the citations and they're going to be reduced to a fine and he's going to be fine.
I would think. Um, but so it's interesting because they kept him overnight, which when I woke up in the morning and I read that like, Justin Timberlake has been arrested, he's being like released from jail. And I was like, for them to keep him overnight, that sounds like he really messed up, because they don't usually keep people overnight for a mere traffic violation. Um, and if they had gotten to the station and were like, oh, yeah, he's actually not wasted, they would have let him go because you can't just hold somebody for nothing, right? So I I don't know. I've kind of wondered, and this is like purely me, just like what evidence do the cops have? Like, do they have the video? Obviously, there's probably a body cam video of him doing his sobriety test where he's like a mess, right? Um, so yeah, they must have had a very, very good reason to not just arrest him and like hold him. They didn't release him till the next morning. So I feel like there's some body cam footage or something that we're going to see that's like, we had to hold him in the drunk tank because he had to actually sober up because he was definitely drunk, even though we don't have the DWI, like the breathalyzer or a blood test to confirm.
Yeah, but
So,
you can't say that. Like, sometimes when I'm really tired, I act drunk. So, and I don't even drink alcohol. So I think that they won't have a leg to stand on from that standpoint. You know what I mean?
yeah, it just was interesting to me that they held him overnight. I was like, wow, usually a celebrity is like in and out. You know what I mean? Like their lawyers get them, like they post bail immediately, like it's not a whole thing. But I guess because he had to be arraigned the next morning or
Yeah.
whatever. I don't know. I don't really know how the legal. I went to law school, but I don't really know how the legal process works.
Um,
Um.
so,
So yeah.
so I think that if you get arrested like he did for DUI, I do think they hold you typically overnight. I know that I have had friends in the past who were arrested for DUI, like in college and stuff, and they were held overnight. And there's some very funny stories that accompany that I won't tell on this podcast, but then they were released the next morning and I guess arraigned. I think they start those arraignments really early in the morning. Um,
Hmm.
so, and then, released on their own recognizance or whatever. So, interesting, really interesting. So
Yeah.
then, he leaves. Like he's released, he leaves. We all hear that Jessica Biel is like, you know, filming her
Not
show.
thrilled.
Yeah, the Better Sister, and that she's not happy and whatever. And I would imagine that neither one of them are particularly happy. Um, and I would also think it would be a distraction for her. Hey, look,
Hmm.
I'm trying to film a show and you get arrested for DUI and you're on a world tour. Like, WTF, dude?
Right.
Um,
Like now there's paparazzi in her face. There, like one of the photos that came out like a day or two later was her on set, and they're like, she's not wearing a wedding ring, and it's like, well, maybe her character doesn't wear a wedding ring. Like I don't know that that means anything at all. Um, but yeah, now
well,
she's got to deal with the paparazzi in her face, and she didn't do anything wrong, and they are a very private couple, especially when it comes to their kids. So she's probably thinking about like, great, are we going to have like this massive amount of press intrusion like they did? And we will talk about this in another episode when he had the did he or didn't he cheating scandal a few years ago. So she's probably like, what the hell? Like, he messes up again. Now I have to deal with the press intrusion, even if she's not necessarily mad at him. Like, maybe she's like, whatever, even if he did get a DWI, it's not the end of the world. Who cares? Because that wouldn't necessarily affect a celebrity in the same way that it would affect a normal person. But she's got to deal with, you know, how's this going to impact our private life? Because our private life is not usually that private to begin with. So yeah, she's not thrilled.
So anyway, so now he was arraigned. He was released. He hired Edmund Burke. Edmund or Edward? Edmund?
Edward, I think.
Edward Burke. That's really hard to say. I wonder if he said it wrong his whole life. Edward Burke. That's hard.
Probably didn't say his own name wrong.
I don't know. I say my own name wrong all the time. And one time on a cooler for swim team, I wrote my last name incorrectly. I left out an S in my last name. And then I did what all little kids do, which is I did a little arrow at the top, like where the missing letter was, and I did the letter really small because it was on a Playmate cooler, and I wrote it in black Sharpie. Like, you can't undo that.
Dude, let's discuss people writing on coolers. Chuck and I let my sister borrow a cooler, and she wrote her, like, my maiden name on it. She wasn't married yet. And she wrote, like, our maiden name on the cooler, like, last name hands off or something, and then gives it back to me and Chuck. And we're like, that's not our last name. This is our cooler. Why are you writing on someone else's cooler? We were so mad about it. Like, to this day, it was like 10 years ago. And to this day, it like irritates us.
Please tell me it was not like a Yeti or something.
No. It was just like a like one of the regular brand coolers. I can't think of it. Maybe Playmate. A Playmate one? Yeah, like, or Igloo. It was like an Igloo cooler.
Igloo. Well, isn't Playmate's an Igloo? That Playmate belongs to
so
Igloo.
Like same like family of cooler that just, like, you know, wasn't expensive, but don't write on my stuff.
Yeah, well, but mine was back a long time ago, like in the Stone Age, when like buying a cooler, it was a little tiny cooler. It was like their 13-inch cooler that they came out with for kids, and mine was bright yellow, and I wrote my wrong name on it, and I had to use that cooler for like the next 6 years with my name spelled incorrectly on it with the little tiny S in the middle. Oh my God, that's awful. I was a little traumatized by that. And my mom wasn't like a crafty person. So like a crafty mom would have been like, oh, let's get a big label, like, you know, like a pretty label, and we'll decorate the label over top your name and put your actual name on there. Like you would do like when you're putting a label in like your pants or whatever for camp.
Like, let's make this look cute and intentional.
Yeah. But no, you know, she was like, oh, well, it'll be fine. I want to die right now. Anyway, so back to JT. So he's released, he's arraigned, he goes on some world tour, and then he comes back to court for, I guess, his first court appearance. But he was on a world tour, so I don't know if it was his lawyer handling it or if he was there virtually or what. But apparently,
he was virtual. He was virtual because the press got photos of him like staring into a computer screen, like his Zoom screenshot.
Well, that's awesome. I'm sure he looked great. So then his attorney says so many things have gone wrong in this that basically the whole thing's going to be, you know, we think the whole thing's going to be thrown out at some point. I mean, I don't think he said that verbatim, but something like that, right?
Yeah, because it looks like his attorneys are now alleging that there was like procedural problems, that the DA and the prosecution have, you know, not necessarily behaved in the manner that they were supposed to, that they made some errors and then they tried to fix those errors, which is not really how things are supposed to be done. Like the police aren't supposed to go, and the DA aren't supposed to go like adjusting records after the fact. So his team is saying Justin respects the judicial process, including the DA and the judge who were in court. But the fact remains he was not intoxicated and they made an error in arresting him. We are confident this will be dismissed. So we'll see what happens there. That is an ongoing investigation and criminal trial.
So my prediction is they'll throw out the DUI, keep the 2 citations, reduce them to like a tiny little misdemeanor or whatever the
Or just like a
smallest amount of.
traffic ticket, like a moving
Yeah.
violation.
Although that stays with you forever, by the way. Like you can still find that 25 years later.
Yeah, but I
And
feel like if you get a traffic ticket, like it's not like it go like like people get a speeding ticket or like you get a ticket for running a stop sign. And I feel like that goes away after a while. And it's not something that's going to like ruin your life, right? Like and also he's not applying for regular jobs. Nobody's looking into his background and being like, oh dear, speeding ticket in the Hamptons in 2024. You can't have this job. Like, I don't think it'll impact him that much.
yeah, I don't think it's going to impact him at all, provided that they throw out the DUI. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Like he's Justin Timberlake. His net worth is $250 million. If he never does another thing for a second for the rest of his life, he'll be okay. Like him and his kids and his grandkids, they'll be fine. So,
And it would be a travesty for them to try to jail him. That would be insanity.
I don't think
And I
there's any
think,
grounds to jail him. This is
yeah,
all a matter of like, is he going to get a simple traffic ticket or is he going to have a DUI on his record and have to lose his license for however much time? Which again, he's Justin Timberlake. He'll just hire a driver and it's a non-issue.
yeah,
So, losing your license doesn't impact you as much as it would impact a regular human being when you have $250 million at your disposal.
Yeah, he is definitely not a regular human being.
No.
In any way. So, all that said, this is not his first controversy. So, while we're going to wrap up this session where we are now, we're going to come back and cover some of his other controversies. We're going to cover his beginnings, his middles, his where he is now,
Mm-hmm.
all the way. So, we wanted to start with something a little bit kind of, really relevant right now. But we're going to go back and talk about some of the other stuff he's done that's sort of stupid, and then the other stuff he's done that's amazing.
Yeah.
So, uh,
I think he's such a perfect case study in the rise and fall of pop culture phenoms because he has been on top of the world and he's messed up a few times. And it's just been kind of, I don't want to say brushed under the rug, but because he's Justin Timberlake, it's like, all right, well, he's always had such a good boy persona and image that it doesn't stick with him in the way that it might have impacted another celebrity or person of, high profile. So I think it's really, I think his is going to be a really fun one to dive into because it also, we're going to take a look at in some of the scandals that he was a part of, how the other people in those scandals were really negatively impacted and how he came out of it with like barely a scratch. And it's like, how did that happen? Like, what's the misogyny going on there?
well, I think he has really great crisis management people. That makes a huge difference. We're not talking
Mm-hmm.
about it right now, but if you just look at what's happening right now with Justin Baldoni and Blake Lively and their
Oh,
huge
yeah.
feud, Justin Baldoni is getting destroyed while Blake is suffering some reputational damage, but they've both hired crisis management firms, or at least I know for sure
Yeah, but you know
Justin Baldoni
what?
has hired
The fact,
one.
yeah, the fact that he hired the same firm that, uh, oh my God, I'm blanking, Johnny Depp hired, to me says there is something that's gonna come out that hasn't yet, that is a bigger deal than, oh, these two people like didn't get along on set, you know?
Well, I saw an article last night that said he fat shamed her after she had her baby.
Yeah, I saw that, but I think the context of it isn't that bad. Like he has back problems and he was supposed to lift her over his head and he was like, "Hey, is this going to mess my back up to do this?" Which I feel like, he didn't ask her. He asked his doctor or his like medical trainer or whatever. So it's kind of like, I get it. I get where he was coming from. Maybe he didn't do it in the most like eloquent, respectful way, but I understand his concern if he meant like no harm. Like, like he wasn't fat shamed. She felt fat shamed, but his intention was not to fat shame her. His intention was just to be like, hey, is lifting a person over my head like an okay thing for me to be doing with this injury that I have? But I don't know. Even then, you don't hire a crisis manager who has repped people who are being accused of like severe domestic abuse,
Yeah.
like, I don't know.
Something's going to come out. I feel it.
Yeah,
Um,
for sure.
so anyway, we should cover Blake and um, Ryan at some point because I think
We should
that would
cover
be.
Blake and Ryan as a couple, but we should also cover this movie, It Ends With Us, and what was that one like a couple years ago? Don't Worry, Darling, or whatever, or Don't Worry, Sweetheart, or the
Don't
one that
worry,
was like
darling.
Olivia Wilde and Harry
Yeah,
Styles, and like they had so much behind the scenes drama.
yeah. Don't worry, darling.
Yeah, we should
Yeah,
cover
for sure.
the like few things.
For sure. Well, girl, thanks so much for hopping in with me today. And I'm excited about the next episode, and we will be dropping it within the next week or so. So, you guys have a great rest of your day and take care.